director and a researcher of note. That's Graham Hopwood. Good afternoon, Graham.
Good afternoon. Great to be here.
And on the line on Zoom, we are joined by Jóhannes Stefánsson, the Fishrot whistleblower. Good afternoon, Jóhannes. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely brilliant. So our topic of discussion this afternoon is Fishrot 3 years on. Just to give you a bit of background, 3 years ago, news organizations such as the Namibian newspaper, Al Jazeera, and other international media outlets uncovered one of the country's largest corruption scandals. The scandal brought to light how Namibia's fishing resources were allegedly exploited for billions of dollars by a clique of well-connected individuals for their own benefit. This obviously disadvantaged Namibians from benefiting from their own resources. The scandal is now known worldwide as the Fishrot scandal. It resulted in the arrest of several influential figures, including former Fisheries Minister Bernard Esau, ex-Justice Minister Saki Shangala, as well as businessman James Hatikulipi and his cousin Fiti Hatikulipi, former Fishco Chief Executive Officer Maingi Punya, and businessman Ricardo Gustavo, for allegedly conniving to benefit from public resources. Gustavo is, however, out on stringent bail conditions, and court processes are still ongoing. So, like I said, we have a panelist of three to discuss this issue as we celebrate 3 years ever since the unveiling or the revealing of the country's biggest ever corruption scandal. I'll start off with you, Jemima. Like I said, good afternoon. I certainly hope you are settled well. Maybe let's just start with you breaking the ice for us. What would you say are some of the major highlights that we have actually seen this year in court as the Fishrot scandal continues to unfold?
Well, I think as much as, this is obviously still in court, the implicated ministers and the alleged co-suspects, the charges that they are facing are still just allegation. It has not been proven. But I think what is interesting is that the magnitude of wealth that was taken from Namibians, like you said earlier, large amounts of monies that was squandered. I think it has also raised the question once again about lifestyle audits. I remember before the Fishrot matter broke, Saki Shangala rocked up at Parliament in a red Jaguar. And already then, red flag should have gone up. Also, if you looked at the watches he wore and how he, the luxurious life he led. These are the kind of things that we see every day, and I think this is what the Fishrot showed us. Things are unfolding in front of our eyes, like the law that was enacted. If you look at that law, it's like it was a plan that was hatched to benefit, to make sure a handful of people benefit from the country's resources, sidelining in the name of the Namibian people, like the governmental objectives, for instance, fish that was supposed to feed poor people of Angola and Namibia, and it never reached them. And I think it really raised serious questions about, like I said, lifestyle audits, and obviously we need more public awareness about what is going on around us. I see a little bit now, especially now with the oil discovery and the recon. You see that Namibians are now, I think Fishrot has really opened Namibians' eyes, not as big as I would have hoped, but Namibians are now a little more aware of what is happening, and they have there's a little more urgency to be involved in what is taking place in their country and how their resources are used and how they benefit from these resources.
Absolutely brilliant. Just to come to you now, Graham, Jemima seems to raise a very pertinent point about obviously now Namibians are now aware of what's happening in their surroundings. I would want you to unpack whether the Namibian government has done enough to close the loopholes that were exploited or allegedly exploited during the Fishrot scandal. And also you could touch on other important sectors like the mining sector, the banking sector, even in the civil service itself. Have we done enough to plug those loopholes legally and also just as a nation?
Well, the short answer is no. Completely, very little has happened. I mean, almost completely nothing. In the fisheries industry, We still have the Marine Resources Act as it was amended in 2015, which allowed the then Minister Bernard Essau almost unilateral, unchecked power to allocate quotas and fishing rights wherever he wanted. And we know that that's part of the accusations in court, that this was abused heavily to enable the Fishrot scandal, which already existed and was happening, but kind of escalated from that point. And also, the other thing that we just don't know who gets the quotas and the rights, even now. The whole industry and the way the government runs it is mired in secrecy, and nothing is ever announced. We've had a little bit of light because the government has organised, I think now, 8 auctions, 7 that actually actually happened, and that was to sell off the governmental objective quota, the one that used to go to Fishrot and was abused, Fish Corps, and was abused as part of Fishrot. So at least through that we can see a little bit about who's operating, which companies are active, but we don't really know much, and we need a massive shift in attitude and mindset, but also in the laws and policies to be able to monitor what's happening in fisheries. Mining is not quite so bad in terms of it's not a completely closed area like fisheries is, but it's still hard to find out information. And one of the things that we've been pushing, and it's actually in Harambe now, we must join the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, or if we have some objection to that, we must at least adopt their main standards of transparency just domestically, because then we would have clear registers of who has what, who owns what, in terms of licenses, quotas, rights, across the extractive industries, whether it should include mining, fishing and forestry actually, and what we call beneficial ownership, which is a kind of buzz phrase at the moment in the international community, but it boils down to knowing actually who the owners are. So not allowing or making it illegal to have front companies or proxy people in companies to know exactly who the owners are. And that obviously is to rule out conflict of interest, to make sure politically exposed persons are not involved in companies where they also can influence the decisions on who gets these resources, who gets access to fisheries, to mining minerals, and so on.
Oh, thanks a lot, Graham. We'll come to you now, Jóhannes. You just said Graham raising very pertinent issues again. You are literally the man who broke this whole ice out. The Namibian justice system is unfolding, slow indeed, but that's how it moves. Are you now satisfied with the way the justice system is moving towards dealing with this issue in Namibia?
Yes, I would say so, because, the challenges are so many for the investigators and prosecutors. And the media is playing a big role to have the public informed, as Graham at the IPPR. And this is really important because the investigators and prosecutors need that support. I don't think without the media we would have gone this far. So for me to blow the whistle, and because I blow the whistle to see justice served, I think we are on the right track with that. And I really salute the investigators and prosecutors for the determination and the bravery in this matter. I still think it's a long road ahead. We see there is a constant challenges in the court with the bail applications and other issues. So they are really working hard, the prosecutors team, to protect and defend the ongoing matters. So I think Namibia have really showed that they can take on a case like this, and we see there is the Fishrot accused. Most of them have been in jail now, waiting trial for almost 3 years. We see more and more information coming on the surface, which happened after my time, because keep in mind, the corruption scheme got bigger after my time. And we see the investigators are really doing a good work to fully expose this. So I'm quite happy with how things are going, but I'm also fully aware there's a lot of challenges, and there will be many more challenges ahead.
Many more challenges indeed. If you're just joining us, you're tuned to 95.3 FM, desertradio.fm. And if you're in Windhoek, you definitely would find us on 95.3 FM. Anywhere else in the world at desertradio.fm. And if you also want to interact with us, feel free to give us your comment on the Namibian Facebook page. Tell us what you think about this grand corruption that was exposed 3 years ago. The trial still continues. I'll come to you now, Jemima. Obviously, the unfolding of Fishrot has changed the media landscape in Namibia. If you check now how the broadcast of the Fishrot case from the court, it has also gone to a point where it's even broadcast live on social media. How much of an impact has this case opened up other avenues in the media and also created a completely different dimension of reporting in the country?
It has absolutely made a great impact significantly. And I think what is important is that it is a lot more than just keeping your audiences informed in real time as events are unfolding. Ultimately, it is about the strengthening of democracy and enhancing access to judicial processes for the public at large. This is certainly a step in the right direction. Of course, the digital divide still remains a challenge. As you know, data cost is still a problem, and accessibility to the internet is also still a hurdle that needs to be overcome. However, we are certainly making progress, and that needs to be acknowledged in Namibia, and especially also given the fact that we have been a free press, and that we. I think what is most notable is the fact that for a very long time, while gradually Namibians have lost faith in the judicial system. And we've also seen journalists being intimidated around this time when the Fishrot broke. We are seeing it during this time now. But the fact that, it is certainly commendable that the judiciary, the Office of the Judiciary, has allowed journalists to actually come to court and basically transform how media is, how the news is reported from court these days.
Indeed, if you are just joining us, we're joined in the studio by Institute for Public Policy researcher, Executive Director Graham Hopwood, and also Jemima Beukes, a veteran journalist from the Namibian Sun. Online via Zoom, we have Jóhannes Stefánsson, the popular Fishrot whistleblower. I'll come to you, Graham, just to give us a bit on, so far it's been 3 years down the line, and the very same laws that were allegedly used or purportedly used to have siphoned there's billions of dollars from the Namibian Blue Ocean are still being used, and there hasn't been really much effort being made so far to change these laws, maybe to amend them or to tighten up. Why do you think so? Why is this happening?
I think there's a lot of vested interests in the fishing industry. And we know, from the registers of members' interests in the National Assembly, that quite a lot of MPs have directorships or shareholdings in fishing companies. So I don't think there's a great push for reform from within the government, a lack of political will, really. And the ministry, when Dr. Albert Koana took over after Fishrot, he made a number of statements saying they were going to move quickly on this and that they recognised the faults in the Marine Resources Act, but then nothing happens, So obviously this is quite a familiar story that implementation and action just seem to take years in Namibia. But in this particular case, I think it's rooted in the fact that a lot of vested interests in the fishing industry who are benefiting from the current situation. There may be more corruption scandals going on. It is so secretive that we don't actually know. We don't know who's getting the quotas, how they're being traded, because what tends to happen is a lot of the companies that get quotas and they have rights, they don't have the capability to do any fishing, so they actually just sell them on for quite a hefty price to the more recognized players. It's just a completely dysfunctional system. And how the minister, can go around to international meetings and say how wonderful we are in terms of our marine policy and things, it's just ridiculous because nothing has happened in 3 years. And he's never even spoken to these issues, as far as I'm aware, to say that these reforms are at least in the works and are going to happen by a certain date. They talk about consultations, but as far as I'm aware, they've only spoken to fishing companies. They don't talk to civil society or broader society. But we all have a stake in this. We have a stake in it because of Fishrot, because we've lost billions of dollars due to corruption, and there may be more disappearing. We just don't know because of the secrecy.
Well, Jóhannes, when you left the country, when you landed in your home country in Iceland, you once raised concerns over your safety. Now that the whole puzzle is unfolding, do you feel safe now?
My safety concerns are always high and has been for over 6 years. And it's a long time ago become way of living. And I'd make, me and my team, we make the safety measurements, and, we take it very seriously. And this is really very fine for me, because keep in mind, when I reported the cases in August 2018 in Namibia, there have already been several attempts to kill me. So I was fully aware what I was entering into, because I knew that the risk would only increase. And this is just, unfortunately, part of when you come forward in a major corruption scandal. And we just have to deal with it like that, because keep in mind, these are organized crime syndicates, and they will have their ways to do things to silence the cases, damage the cases. And so this is ongoing challenges. But, it's after it came in public, it has been easier, for example, when I've had to travel, that the police in that country is just informed about my presence, and they make plans. And also, I'm in good contact with the police in Iceland, and I travel often with bodyguards and make other safety measurements. So this is just part of it.
Oh, this is just part to it. If you are just joining us on 95.3 FM, Desert Radio, the bold voice is where we are, and desertradio.fm if you're anywhere else in the world. There seems to be quite burning a debate that is going on Facebook. I'm just going to take some bit of time to read some of the comments that you are giving us on Facebook, just randomly as they go. Someone says here, I think this is Josie Nolufi Nambala, says, all the Fishrot accused SWAPO. Then we have another comment here from Omes Hatani. They think we will forget and move on as Namibians, and we will not forget as the elections about their during the elections about their greed. We also have Josie Nalufe answering again. Apparently, we must eat more fish. From where? He's asking a question. I think very burning issues that are going on Facebook. You can also play your part by giving us your comment on Facebook, and also just engage with us and tell us what you think about this unfolding scandal that is also now in the courts. I'll come back to you now, Jemima. How widespread is the coverage of Fishrot cases, including social media, on social media, ever since the unfolding of this how widespread has been the coverage of the Fishrot scandal ever since 3 years ago? And ever since then, do you think the government has done enough to reform the fishing industry and ensure that corruption of the same nature is prevented in future?
It is absolutely... So it is definitely becoming a hot topic. It is still a hot topic. It is definitely the front page. Whenever you write about Fishrot, it will certainly make the front page. That is how big a deal this issue is, because, like I've said, it has every day you in court you learn something new. Someone new is implicated, and it hits. I think the most interesting thing about this, or sad thing perhaps, is every time something happens, it hits close to home for someone. Suddenly you hear, oh, this person that stays down the street, he was all, oh my goodness. So the trucks that came there every week, they were actually these. So I think, and this is what is happening. And certainly people are not as much as we would want. People are opening a little more. They are, however, not eager to go on the record. You asked whether government is serious about this. I think Graham has put it very, very clear that no, we can see. I mean, it is very sad that 3 years down the line, government has done almost little to almost nothing to change this law. I mean, that should have been their first port of call after the Fishrot broke, to amend that law, to fix that law, because that law has shown us exactly how Namibians can be fleeced of what is due to them. It is also because of the Fishrot scandal, we've seen more and more people falling into poverty. Before Fishrot, we had fish was part of the drought relief schemes, and suddenly it has dried up, and which is also, so Fishrot has also really opened people's eyes to the sense that before Fishrot, people received fish. And then suddenly they didn't receive fish. And then Fishrot broke, and people, oh my God. And for some time, people thought they were, government did them a favor by giving them fish, only to realize that these are actually things that are due to us. So no, and also the fact that 3 years down the line, we have not sorted out the fishermen issue, the employment matter of the fishermen. Some of them are still scattered in Walvis Bay. Some of them are still, just recently, I think last week or early this week, there was a parliamentary standing committee on this matter. And former Information Minister Chikera Twea highlighted and said, in fact, that this matter must become a national matter. It should not be a side event, because Fishrot was not a side event. And I think we should also stop addressing, in the beginning, in fact, the media, I think the media did its part to obviously report on these things, but Namibians did not take it very seriously until someone else came and cast a bigger, light on it. However, when there was I remember when the first strike was organized by the fishermen, very little attention was given to it. And I think as the media and as Namibians, we should definitely draw lessons from this. Whenever there is a smoke, even if it is tiny little smoke of a tiny little candle, you must investigate it. You must go, because it is often where the big things are. And I think that is where, as journalists, we should really improve, to look deeper into things and not just go where the big fires are, but also where the small fires are. So yeah, that's so I think the government should definitely do more. I think what is also a hurdle, and perhaps the Achilles heel of government in addressing that, in reforming that law, is that it is not only the SWAPO government members of parliament who have rights in fishing rights. We see many opposition members of parliament who have fishing rights, and they are not as vocal as they should be, as one would expect. And in fact, that is perhaps where our problem lies, the fact that our MPs have fishing rights. Because, if I have a right in a candy shop, am I going to push for it to be closed? I will not.
Well, the time on the clock is at 12 minutes to 2, and Jemima says wherever there is even the smallest of smoke, we should investigate. I'll come to you, Graham. The IPPR has advocated for action to be taken against Icelandic seafood company Samherji for their role in the fishing scandal. Can you elaborate on this stance?
Yes, so aside from the legal process, we think that Samherji should be involved in paying compensation, essentially, to the communities that were very badly affected at the coast, and to Namibia as a whole, for the damage this has caused and the money that has been lost that could have been used for development. So I think that's where the international sort of discussion is moving now. Obviously, we're still waiting for Iceland to properly charge and arrest their suspects. We have 3 of them which we are on our list of suspects. We also haven't asked for their extradition. But while those legal issues are going on, I think the campaign is now starting to build for restorative justice. So the idea that Iceland and Samherji in particular must take responsibility. They're a multinational. They're not just an Icelandic company. They're all over the world. They have operations in the US and Germany. They're working in the UK. So, they need to be held account in Iceland and across their network, and they need to be urged to come to a point where they can return our assets. And the government's role here is also important, because it will be difficult but not impossible to have an asset recovery process without the backing of the government, Ministry of Justice and others, Attorney General, need to be involved in this. So I think it could be a test case in a way for restorative justice internationally, that this is now taking off, that we want to see Sam Harry held responsible. They have basically they've said sorry in a very half-hearted way in one media statement so far. It's nowhere near enough. In Iceland, they've actually been seen to be intimidating and harassing Icelandic journalists. So, their attitude has been pretty appalling so far. They don't take responsibility. They're not acknowledging that what they've done to Namibia in terms of the damage. So we definitely want to see action not only in Namibia, but also in Iceland and in the other jurisdictions which enabled this. Norway is supposed to be a country that's cleaner than clean. One of their state banks facilitated the movement of money. Many other dispensations, Cyprus, Mauritius, Marshall Islands. We haven't really even touched on Angola, which was at the heart of part of Fishrot in terms of one element of Fishrot was linked to the Angolan fisheries minister. She resigned shortly after the revelations 3 years ago. But, that, as far as we know, no further action has been taken in Angola. So, we can't just see it as a Namibian issue, nor just a Namibian and Icelandic issue. It is an international issue. And I think what we'll see in the next 6 months to a year is an international campaign demanding restorative justice and demanding asset recovery for Namibia.
Wow, Jóhannes, during the ongoing bail applications that have been experienced this year and sometime last year, there have been claims by some of the accused that you might not even come to Namibia. Will you come to Namibia?
Yes, it's 100%. I will come to Namibia to testify, and I've been very firm in my saying and decision from the beginning. And I said it when I reported the cases to Namibian authorities in August 2018. And I'm fully aware of all the risks and people involved and what to be careful about and so on. I will have my own protectors, and we will make good planning and strategies. And so I'm fully aware of all the risk, and I will be 100% coming, and we will finish this.
Well, he says we will finish this. If you're just joining us on 95.3 FM on desertradio.fm, we are talking about the Fishrot scandal 3 years down the line. We are now just winding off, so I'll just give each one of you guys just a few minutes, a minute tops, just to wind off. And I just will start with you, Jemima. In terms of the reporting that the journalists in Namibia and in the world have done in terms of this corruption scandal, what do you think have been the key lessons that have been learned from reporting, especially uncovering corruption?
I think what people must understand is that the media, journalists in particular, are only as strong as our sources. And our whistleblower protection in Namibia is still hurdled in ways with a lot of uncertainty, and that need to be addressed as soon as possible. In Namibia, we certainly don't have a whistleblowing culture at all. Yes, people will say all sorts of things to you. They will even promise you the documents, but they will never come to share it with you, because we are such a small, close-knit society, and people are afraid of being persecuted. So it is certainly difficult for journalists. We have the Access to Information Bill has just been passed, so it's still a very long way, because the regulations must also still be enacted, and we don't know just how favorable that would be for journalists, because that is where when they say the proof is in the pudding, that's exactly where the proof lies. Where the issues lies, usually with an act. The other thing is that the SIM card registration is certainly a very big deal, and it's certainly, I anticipate that it will make things even more difficult for journalists, because people will just not call you anymore. people would, because I mean, why would I call you if this is people will know exactly who I am? I mean, right now with the cards not being registered and there's no clear way for you to really be identified unless the intelligence is involved, people are not even taking the chances. Why would they do so when their names are actually recorded on a daily database? So these are some of the key issues. We need to really fight for the access to information in this country. When the Media Afrobarometer Namibia 2022 was launched by First Media recently, the Information Ministry's Executive Director, Mr. Audrin Mate, said that they would, they will roll out a new communication system to make sure access is available to journalists. So one has to see how that's going to play out, because promises like this has been made in the past. I remember Chikera Tweya in the past said, if they don't want to give you the answers, ministers or whoever in the public sector, just come to me. And I've personally put it to test, and it didn't work at all. So that is definitely a big issue. And also the fact that there's a perception that corruption is only in the public sector. So the issue of access and information in the private sector should certainly also be addressed. And those are some of the issues that we really need to look at.
Oh, I'll just give you some time to conclude, Jóhannes, since we're running out of time. Just give us maybe just quickly, maybe in a minute or so, when you first realized that the way allegations that a law might actually have been used to siphon public resources for personal gratification by these accused individuals, were you shocked?
Sorry, when it started in 2012?
Yes, when it started in 2012.
Yeah. No, I mean, keep in mind I was part of this, and but I was blinded by the belief we were going to build up in Namibia. And this is just, you were working for a big company and you think this is its way to do business, but we are going to create jobs. 2 years in, around 2014, I stopped to believe it, and I probably stayed 2 years too long there. And it's a process to fully understand what you have been part of. But there was no hesitation by the Icelandic fishing company Samherji, and the Fishrot accused go as far as possible. So, it is still a process to understand what I've been part of. And yes, when you're getting the first information that this is the plan and so on, then you're like, okay, maybe yes, this is maybe not right, but okay, we are going to create jobs. But in the end, there was no jobs created.
Okay, thanks very much to Jóhannes Stefánsson all the way from Iceland joining us via Zoom. Unfortunately, we might have to say goodbye to you earlier than the others because of the time that is lapsing now. So thank you very much for your sentiments that you have given to us. We certainly will keep touch with you in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Graham, I'll just move over to you so we can close off with you. Maybe just to, in a few sentiments, just to cover a few minutes. You see, the IPP, I'll give you this question that you have also released a report last week where you were calling also for greater transparency in the way government deals with national resources. Bearing in mind that we are now talking of 3 years, over this Fishrot scandal, what also do you think have been some of the major delays that why government is not really willing to consult with public, civil sector, or also to even the public to amend laws in a way that actually benefits Namibians rather than a few individuals?
Well, I think when Fishrot happened, the initial reaction from a lot of SWAPO figures was, no, we have to self-correct, we have to reform. And as time has gone on, we just haven't seen that take place. And I think it's because of the extent of corruption at the top levels of our society, that even those who are against it find it hard to speak out. Remember how Tom Alwendo, Kalle Schlettwein and Leon Juster were shut up very quickly when they tweeted their shock and dismay at Fishrot in the beginning. So, how do we know that? Well, look at the SWAPO Congress coming up. So many of those candidates have, corruption allegations against them. In some cases, for example, the candidate for the Secretary General position, he's an admitted beneficiary of Fishrot, and yet no action has been taken. And that's another issue that's linked to this, is impunity. So aside from the 10 people on trial now, there's probably at least 7 or 8 other people who should have been arrested. Some of them are very prominent public figures. They seem to have impunity. They're beyond the law enforcement bodies. The Prosecutor General is reluctant to go after them because of their political connections. So really, we should be having a Fishrot 2 trial as well, with all the other people who benefited, some of them in Parliament, some of them senior in SWAPO, lawyers who clearly abused their trust funds and so on. So, you know, we're nowhere near the end of this, and justice has not been served, not just because the case has not yet gone to trial, but because so many aspects of this in Namibia, in Iceland and internationally have not been dealt with. And we, as the public, as civil society, as the media, have to really remain engaged and active on this, because it's the only way we're going to root this corruption out.
Well, remain engaged indeed, and we are engaged here on Desert Radio 95.3 FM if you are in Windhoek, Adordabis, Rehoboth and surrounding areas.